welcome in. It is Big Ten Today on a Wednesday. We are presented by Rally House. Great to have you with us. I'm Dave Revson. This is the day we generally start to turn the page and turn our attention and our focus to the games coming up this weekend. And who better to do that with, he asked rhetorically, than Jerry DiNardo, who joins me now. Coach, welcome. Some fun matchups here in week 3.
It's good to be welcomed, and there are some good matchups, but it's also towards the end of the non-conference play. So in a couple weeks, it'll be all Big Ten versus Big Ten. It'll be interesting. Yeah,
lots to look forward to there, but we'll focus in on this week. And one of the stories early on here, Coach, has been how good the Big Ten offenses have been to this point in the season. That is our big story. It is presented to you by Rally House. The Big Ten often noted for its great Ds. We have plenty of those, but I mean, look at some of these numbers. USC leading the nation in scoring offense. Oregon and Washington both in the top 5 as well. Illinois and Minnesota both solidly in the top 25. And as we look at the big board for week 3, you see the two teams at the top of that list, the Trojans and the Ducks, both getting set to start conference play this week. USC's going to be in West Lafayette to battle Purdue. Oregon's coming here to the Chicago area. They'll be on the lakefront in Evanston taking on Northwestern. And, Coach, I want to start there, and I want to start with Oregon. And I know that it is early on, and I understand levels of competition have been different, but I certainly think you can make the argument that they've been the most impressive team in the Big Ten so far. They have just obliterated their two opponents so far. In your opinion, what has made them so good to this point?
Well, the first thing is their offense. Their offense is an offense that is very physical and also can be really explosive. And it's hard to blend those two in. We've got some video here that'll show you that. They're a gap scheme. They're a double team at the line of scrimmage. So here's a play, hardly touched. There's no one to front up the ball at the free safety position. But this play worked because of how physical the offensive line is. Then they can come back and they can be explosive. Here's an example of an explosive play. And so when you're trying to defend them and they're doing these two things, it's really hard to defend them. Then the third play, they're back to the line of scrimmage, and now they're back running the ball again. So to me, Rever, the reason that this team is so good on offense is because of what the three plays look like to you right away. They're physical and they can be explosive. So to me, right now, Oregon's the leader in the clubhouse as far as diversity of offense and how productive their offense is, and it's because of the blend of finesse and power.
You saw them, I know, in camp. You were part of that West Coast trip. Are you surprised at how efficiently it's run? I think the one thing that we wondered about, or that I wondered about anyway, was just the lack of continuity, just one starter returning on offense. You had Dante Moore in the system last year, so he was learning the ropes. There's certainly a lot of guys in that offensive group who contributed last year, but the roles have been enhanced, and it seems like not only have they missed a beat, Jerry, I mean, I know they were number 1 for the bulk of the season last year, but I think in some respects, again, we'll see when they play better competition, but man, they might be better.
Yeah, I mean, at camp, they look like they've looked so far in the first couple games. I mean, so that's not a surprise. But as you say, Rever, let's wait until we get into conference play and see them play some of the better teams, not only in the conference but in the country. But the fast start doesn't surprise me whatsoever from what I saw at camp. And I share this all the time. I was in Will Stein's quarterback meeting, the offensive coordinator, and I was in his unit meeting, and the teaching progression was the most impressive I've ever seen. So the fact that they have got off to a fast start, I think, has a lot to do with the coaching of Dan Lanning and his staff.
Yeah, an excellent staff. Will Stein's done an amazing job as the offensive coordinator there, and the defense hasn't been too shabby either. They've held their first two opponents under 250 yards. So it feels like a really complete team. It feels like an immense challenge for Northwestern. And the Wildcats certainly look better in week 2 than they did in week 1. They were just completely overmatched against Tulane. They did a nice job of bouncing back against, obviously, a lesser opponent in Western Illinois. But what's the challenge here for Northwestern? Big Noon's going to be there. You're going to have a lot of the national spotlight on this game. What can Northwestern do to keep it close?
Well, the challenge is internal, not external, right? They made tremendous improvement from game one to game two. What their goal should be we want to play our best game. We can't control it. We're playing a really good Oregon football team. But what we can do is get ourselves ready to play better than the first two games. And if in fact in a upset position, and most upsets are because the favorite team is turning the ball over, a lot of penalties, unforced errors, all things that indicate that the favorite team is not really up for the game emotionally. So all Northwestern could do is commit to being the best version of themselves after the first 3 weeks. Let Oregon come into town. If they start making some mistakes, make sure that you're in position to take advantage of them, because that's how upsets happen. When the underdog takes advantage of opportunities that the favorite doesn't usually give them. So it's simple for Northwestern. Play your best game, and let's see what happens on Saturday.
And for all the success that they've had, it's been pretty remarkable, as we all know, over the last 30 years, the way Northwestern has turned its program around. But they have not beaten a team in the top five in that stretch. In fact, they haven't beaten a team in the top five since 1959. So this would be a monumental win, no doubt. But again, can they keep it close? Can they keep it interesting? And can they get something to build on for further down the line this season? So that's the story with Oregon. We saw USC, the highest scoring team in the country to this point, and SC, in fact, Jerry, also averaging the most yards per game of any team in the nation. I want to ask you kind of similar framing to what we were talking about with Oregon, because you had a chance to go to camp as well for USC. How does this compare with what you expected after watching the Trojans out in LA?
Yeah, this is the danger of on the bus plane tour, that you watch a team once, and if it's a bad practice, you come away with a bad opinion. If it's a good practice, the opposite happens. So for me, I came away from the SC practice thinking that, they're not overly physical. It didn't look like some of the other Big Ten practices I had seen. And yet, when you watch the tape of their first two games, and obviously the competition was similar to a lot of other teams in the Big Ten that play non-conference opponents, overly impressed with how good they look, especially at the line of scrimmage, which I didn't come away with a favorable opinion from practice. But again, it's one practice. You have to be really careful to make blanket statements coming away from one practice. But the better competition is going to really show us what USC is like, just like any other team. But they're certainly talent. Maiyava is off to a great start. He's a great fit for what Lincoln Riley wants to do on offense. If anything, I think perhaps the offense has gotten off to a faster start than the defense, and that also is a little bit of a surprise to me. But now they're in Big Ten play. They've got to come to Purdue. So it's going to change. It's going to change a little bit.
Well, they've been a big play team so far. On defense, they lead the Big Ten in sacks and tackles for loss. They have 7 plays offensively, over 50 yards already through 2 games, which leads the nation. They're leading the nation in rushing yards per game. And I think people forget how good the rushing attacks were for Lincoln Riley when he had his best teams at Oklahoma. To your point, Jerry, a little bit more physical on the line of scrimmage. And it's interesting to do this comparison game of kind of what you thought versus what you end up seeing. I mean, I would just say Purdue, I can say it now because it's clear that they are dramatically improved in these first 2 games. I think have borne it out. But it was a rough day. The day we were at Purdue practice, we saw a scrimmage. I mean, it was really disjointed. So I'll just say they're better than I think they were going to be, than I thought they were going to be, by a pretty significant margin. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I would. And it wasn't so much how good or how bad they looked that they were there. It was the fact that it was the second day in pads, and they had a scrimmage over 100 plays. And I think for Coach Odom to sort through that from that day that we were there to today, for him to have sorted through that roster and come up with a 2 deep that has played lights out, that is got a lot of confidence going into the USC game. I think Ryan Brown, Coach Henson, offensive coordinator, I think they've been really the key to the thing, the play calling and the fact that Ryan Brown is playing so well in his first 2 games. But we knew when we were at camp, because of the schedule, that they could be 2-0. but they look more impressive. It's a more impressive 2-0 than I expected, and they'll be ready for USC. This could be a very interesting game.
Yes, I would agree with what you said. I mean, I'm not shocked they're 2-0, but I think your point is a great one. It feels to me like, based on what I saw when we saw it and what we've seen here in these first 2 games, maybe they made the most progress of any team. And perhaps that's to be expected because they're the only team with a new head coach in the Big Ten. They had a largely new roster. And so you're still kind of in that feeling out process. You mentioned Josh Henson. It is pretty interesting that he was with Lincoln Riley for 3 years at USC, and so now he's at Purdue. To what extent, if any, is there an advantage there? Like, how does that factor in? How does the fact that Coach Odom worked with Maava, he was his quarterback for a year at UNLV, to what extent, if any, do those things factor in?
Yeah, in these situations, they can help a game plan because they can give a defensive coordinator, like Coach Henson, by way of example, could give the defensive coordinator at Purdue a real insight into some of the personnel. There may be something that someone is really good at on the opposing team that hasn't shown up yet, or more important, they may have a problem with personnel on the opponent's team, Southern Cal this is, that Coach Henson knows, but you wouldn't know it by watching the tape, especially of the first 2 games. So if there is an advantage, it's the scouting report, not as much the scheme. It's the scouting report that the previous coach on the team that you're now playing can go to the other staff room. Obviously, Coach Henson can go to the defensive staff room at Purdue and share his opinion about all the players that are coming back from USC. How about the ones that didn't start last year that are starting this year? How would you know? I mean, you watch the first 2 games, but you really wouldn't know as much about them as, by way of example, Coach Henson would know about them.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, I think, Jerry, when you think about 2 programs like Purdue and USC, which you wouldn't think have much of anything in common. They're meeting for the first time since 1998, and yet you have these through lines through the program, which I do think adds a really interesting subtext to the game. Mentioned Barry Odom. We're going to talk to Barry Odom. We'll hear from him, Ashley Adamson, sitting down with him. That's a little bit later in our show. We are back on Big Ten Today, the conference with the top 2 teams and 3 of the top 4 in the latest AP poll, Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon. Illinois not too far behind in the top 10 for the first time in 24 years. Indiana and Michigan at 22 and 23 respectively, with USC and Nebraska among the others receiving votes. Jerry, let's dive into the nation's #1 team. What, if anything, did you learn about Ohio State in the rout of Grambling?
The most unknown qualities of a #1 team, right? I mean, we know this. They're a tough team. They're a motivated team because that game against Texas was an incredible first game. So we know what kind of personality the team has. We just don't know the specifics yet, right? We're not sure where they're going to wind up in the run game, in the pass game, because you get a personality coming out of Texas, but against Grambling, you don't really get much. If you look at the statistics, they're basically in the middle of most categories. So this is going to be a slow unfolding team that's going to develop during the year, and they're going to just get better. But I have to be honest, I don't know a bunch about them yet.
It's hard to know. Again, no disrespect to Grambling. It's not a program that is built to compete with Ohio State, and they weren't able to compete with Ohio State. I still think there's significance in a shot. There's certainly significance, Jerry, in giving up 7 points through 2 games when one of those games was against Texas. I mean, we talked about Matt Patricia last week, but it certainly feels like this has been a really good marriage to this point.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, as Matt Patricia puts more on tape, the opponents are going to be able to attack him a little bit more. I'm sure they've gone back and looked at him in the NFL tape, but this is still a little different. But again, if I'm an opposing coach trying to figure out what Matt Patricia is going to do the rest of the year, I still don't have a great feel, right? I know what he did against Texas, which was impressive, but I probably didn't learn anything from the Grambling game. And so, the next big game that they play, meaning playing against one of the highest ranked teams in the country, might be Penn State, might be Illinois. There's not going to be a lot on the tape for Matt Patricia.
Well, we'll see how they look against Ohio U this week. That is an offense that's going to pose some challenges for a defense with Parker Navarro. We saw them nearly beat Rutgers in week 1, and then they did beat West Virginia in week 2. So a more challenging opponent, no doubt, this week for the Buckeyes. Penn State was not quite as impressive against FIU, particularly that 10-0 halftime score, I think, jumped out at people. To what extent do you have concern about the Nittany Lions coming out of that game?
You know, not really a lot of concern. I guess maybe the best way to put this would be I'm on alert for concern. I mean, if it happens again, if it happens more often, if you're playing a team that you have a lot more talent than, and it looks like it looked last week, that is reason for concern. So, but you're not hitting the panic button yet. They're still doing a lot of things better than they did a year ago. Obviously, the wide receivers, the 3 portal guys are averaging 12 receptions a game. Last year, the entire receiving core averaged 6 receptions a game. They're throwing the ball more downfield, not where you would say they're an explosive offense yet, but I think that's probably where they want to head. Well, I mean, why wouldn't any offense want to be explosive? So they're doing some good things there. Jim Knowles, you know, he's still feeling out his defense, and so he's got some more time to really try to figure out the best way to do things. He's kind of a mad scientist, as you know, and so give him more time to settle in as the defensive coordinator. The defensive line is playing extremely well. They have controlled the line of scrimmage regardless of what's happening in the back end.
They have allowed less than 300 yards of offense in each of their first 2 games, just 11 points total allowed by Penn State to this point. To your point, I don't think we're going to learn a whole lot more this week against Villanova. This doesn't feel all that dissimilar from Ohio State against Grambling. Then you have the bye, and then you have the Oregon game. And maybe you just reserve judgment until the Oregon game. That's one that obviously everyone is going to be focused on, the whiteout, and a ton of national attention for that one. Big Ten tailgate was at Penn State last week. It will be at Michigan this week. All the pregame festivities in Ann Arbor, then countdown to kickoff, bringing you the latest from around the conference right before the action begins. It all starts Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. So Sharon Moore suspended for the next 2 games. What's the challenge here as Biff Poggi takes over and will be running that sideline for the next 2 weeks?
Okay, well, the head coach's most important job is getting a team ready during the week, and Sharon can do that. He's got to get them ready physically, emotionally, strategically. That's his job, and he will do that. Now, next week might be a different situation, but Sharon's going to be there all week, which was most important. Come game day, Biff is number 4 on the level of importance. It's the offensive coordinator has the toughest job, then the defensive coordinator, and then the special teams coordinator. Those 3 people have more to do with winning and losing on game day than the head coach, unless there's a game management decision. Taking a penalty, denying a penalty, going for 2, going for it on 4th down. Game management makes the head coach's job the most important. Biff has done this because he was the head coach at Charlotte. He's been at Michigan prior to being the head coach at Charlotte. So if anyone's prepared to do it, it's Biff. Plus, he's not really coaching a position. So the special teams coach, the defensive coordinator, and offensive coordinator, they can go on business as usual during the week with Sharon, business as usual come Saturday. Unless there's a game management issue, then it's going to be all on Biff's shoulders. Then the head coach is the most important person on the sidelines, and Sharon won't be there. So Biff's got a lot of pressure on him if there's a game management decision that has to be made.
And it works out reasonably well just in terms of how the schedule lays out because of the 2 games that Sharon Moore is going to miss, at least on paper. The one next week feels like the more difficult one against Nebraska, and so perhaps you work out some of those challenges in week 1. Biff Poggi gets comfortable in that role, and then, to your point, if you do have one of those situations, which seems more likely a week from now, he feels a little more comfortable. Purdue is 2-0 for the first time in 4 years, topping Ball State and Southern Illinois. Among the notable notes from those 2 games, they've scored 14 first-quarter points in both outings. They had 13 first-quarter points total last year. Barry Odom doing something no Purdue head coach has done in more than 100 years, starting his tenure at 2-0. Our big interview today, Odom with Ashley Adamson.
Coach, first and foremost, congratulations on the 2-0 start. I know you're getting ready for a very talented USC team that's coming into town. But before we go there, now that you've got 2 games under your belt, what has stood out most to you about this group?
Yeah, I think number one, we're excited to be 2-0 2 weeks in. So we've made progress. I think really in every position group played better week 2 than we did week 1. There were some things that we started the season so fast, offense, defense, and kicking in the first game, almost like really to the script on how it could have started, went about to plan there, which was fun to see. The guys were excited about that. They executed really well. And then the next game offensively kind of really picked up where we left off that first week. Defensively struggled a little bit early on, but then after the first 2 series kind of settled down and things slowed down for them. I think we've got to be really good at complementary football. As this continues, as we grow this team on the things that we've got to do. We've been able to take care of the ball. We've turned it over one time. We got to start getting it back on defense. We haven't done that yet. We've been solid in special teams. So, and then the penalties, I've been pleased with the lack of penalties that we've committed. So our plan to win, we're going to continue to work on those things. The field position, starting point, special teams, how great can we be? Taking care of the football, being able to run the ball is so important, being able to stop the run. Those things will be our plan to win.
Yeah, and I mean, of all the stats, and there's a lot of them, but the penalties allowed was one that definitely jumps off the page when you look at, and I think number 2 in the nation in terms of fewest penalties given up so far 2 weeks in. I know also all the belief is such an important part of football. And so for the guys who hadn't been able to celebrate a win in over a full year, what have you seen in the locker room just from a confidence perspective and what you've been able to build the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because every team's so different, right? And this one, there's still some guys that were here last year. So I think early on there was a little bit of feeling out, so to speak, in a lot of ways, not just playing winning football, but just, a new year, a new opportunity, some of those things, and you learn from your experiences. So I was excited to see them celebrating in the locker room after the first win. I mean, I know that was a long time coming, especially for the home crowd. To be able to feel that, the excitement, they've been tremendous the first 2 weeks, and all the different things that go into that. It's been a lot of fun to see, and I understand how passionate the fans are for Purdue, and I'm excited to be able to provide a winning product for them.
And they are eager and hungry for it. I think when Ross-Ade Stadium is rolling, the cannon, the train horn, the student section sort of right on top of you, it's one of the great atmospheres in college football. Has there been a game day tradition, something that you've noticed that has stood out to you most as you've experienced it?
I think the student section here has just been unbelievable. I mean, it's remarkable. They're in, as soon as they open the gates at the 90-minute mark, the place is full completely. The students, they've been awesome. They're smart football fans because they get loud when they're supposed to get loud. They cheer when they're supposed to cheer. That's been a lot of fun to have them on our side. And I agree with you, Ross-Ade, when done right, and you're playing winning football, it can be one of the toughest environments in college football.
Well, I know the Ross-Ade Brigade is going to be going nuts on Saturday. Let's talk about this Big Ten opener against obviously a very talented USC team. I know you have said, Coach, at every turn that you treat every week as a nameless, faceless opponent, but there is one very familiar face that you will be seeing on the opposite sideline. Tell us about your relationship with the quarterback at USC, Jaden Mayava.
Yeah, number one, I think Coach Riley's done a great job building this roster and, recruiting and the ways that they're built. They're solid at every single position. I mean, they're averaging 66 points in the first couple of weeks. So they're explosive. They're playing aggressive on defense. They got a lot of athletes in every situation. Very well coached. Jaden was my quarterback at UNLV my first year there. He led us to 9 wins and is a terrific competitor, a wonderful, wonderful person. It hurt when he left because I was so close with him. And as you go over the years and all the players have had a chance to coach, you certainly don't want to lose one, and then you even more so you don't want to have to compete against them. That's hard, but we'll be connected forever. I've got a lot of respect for him, love him and his family. We'll have a really good game plan. I know he will. I know how he prepares, and he'll be ready to go. I wish him great success, other than 4 hours on Saturday.
That's fair enough. I love that. And there's familiarity again on both sides. Your offensive coordinator, Josh Henson, just came from USC, so he knows Lincoln Riley's offense inside and out. I'm just curious, like, how does that change sort of the chess match when both sides know in some ways what the other is thinking and what the strengths and weaknesses are?
I think you look at that and I don't know. I don't think I'm unique to this situation, but every year with the coaching changes and now even roster movement, some players that familiar with both sides in whatever way or context. I just try to get all the information we can to find a way to give our team an edge, some way, somehow, even if it's one small thing that gives us a little bit of an edge. I'm going to try to get all the information I can, process it on what we need. Don't overload them with useless information, but there's always ways to find and create advantages for your team. And with the familiarity that Coach Henson has with this side, a little bit more personnel driven than anything, because he's been part of recruiting a number of the guys and then knows the roster. We do a deep dive and help each other out on both sides every single week. This one's been a little more deliberate because he knows so much about each individual player.
Well, I think one of the obvious advantages that you have on your team is your running back. I know you had a pretty good idea of the player that you were getting in Devin Mockabee when you came to Purdue, but what have you learned about him now that you've gone through 2 games as he continues to just climb up those record books at Purdue?
Yeah, I think the thing that has stood out to me, and really over the years, anybody that has had success over their college career, there's a number of factors that go into that. And Devin's the same way. He's very consistent. He's such a hard worker. The team and the organization trust him, and that's a strong word, but they just know he's going to go get his job done. He cares about this place with great passion and energy, and every single day in practice, he carries the ball or makes the block or on special teams. I mean, he has the 4th and 1 mentality in everything that he does, that his back's against the wall and he's got to find a way to have success, and we're going to keep feeding him the ball.
So much of us, we're all products of our environment on some level. Your dad, Bob, was a teacher and a high school football coach, from what I understand. What was the biggest thing you've learned from him that you still use today?
Well, he as the years go on, he's better now than he was ever then, and I understand how that goes. I think really I was really fortunate in our house growing up. Both parents were this. They were loving, number one, but also they set a standard on what our family was going to be, kind of an expectation of representing something bigger than ourselves within our community, and very thankful for that. And I look back and there's times that I catch myself saying something as a dad, and like that almost sounded like the house that I grew up in. So I've learned and continue to pass that on.
We all end up sounding like our parents at some point. Just a couple last things and then we'll let you go. After your first win, the very first person that you thanked on the field was your athletic director, and Mike Babinski. Can you share just what his vision has meant in helping you start to build what you believe is possible at Purdue?
Absolutely. And it goes back to our first conversation we had when there was interest in the job. Everything that Mike has said, he has followed through with. And I think that becomes more rare and rare these days in what that looks like. But he's very stoic in his leadership. He's provided a platform for us to be successful. Everything that we have asked for or needed, he's followed through with and found a way to get it done. And when you have alignment and vision in leadership roles, then things seem to happen a lot faster. And I'm so thankful for that. And he's been there every single step of the way. And I want to turn Purdue football into a winning program for a lot of reasons. One of them is because of Mike Babinski and his leadership.
Yeah, I love that. All right. Well, thank you for the time. I'm going to leave you with one trivia question if you're up for that. So it's been a great start. You're 2-0. Do you know the last time that a Purdue head coach won his first 2 games?
1916, Coach Cleo.
I knew you would know that.
I got a good sports info department.
Of course you do. Yeah. I mean, it's been a long time. Women couldn't even vote the last time that a Purdue head coach. So we've all come a long way. Coach, it's great to see you. Thanks for the perspective and the time. Purdue USC Big Ten opener, 3:30 on CBS. We're excited to watch you.
Great to see you guys. Bowler up.
Well, that schedule does get decidedly more difficult for Odom and company, starting with that matchup Saturday against SC. Then they go to Notre Dame. They get a bye before hosting Illinois. They travel to Minneapolis. They still have Michigan, Ohio State, Washington, Indiana as well. 9 bowl teams from last year, including the 2 that played for the national championship. So not easy for Barry Odom. We've got women's soccer for you tomorrow. Conference play gets underway. A triple header as number 8 Penn State takes on Maryland. Minnesota faces Nebraska, and 15th ranked USC hosts Washington. Live coverage begins at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. But man, this was really a great team win for Michigan State, a team that hasn't played well in second halves. To put together the second half that they did really speaks volumes.
You know, Jonathan Smith reminds me of an offensive Mark D'Antonio. He's steady as can be. He's unemotional. He contributes to his side of the ball that he was an expert in, and that's the offense. And this is the result. To put his team in the second year to beat a team like Boston College in overtime. Look at this play. I mean, it's perfectly executed. And I suggest to you, Aiden Childs was a big part of it, but I also say that Jonathan Smith has done a great job getting Michigan State to this point where they could beat Boston College at home in overtime.
No doubt. You look to keep that momentum going against Youngstown State, because remember, they have 2 road games to start conference play, at USC and at Nebraska. So, again, you feel like you got a great chance here to beat the Penguins. One would expect that they would, but to play well, to keep that momentum going heading into those 2 challenging games. That's the task ahead for Michigan State this week. I want to remind you, you can see the Spartans on Saturday, but don't forget Friday, we've got a football doubleheader as Indiana squares off with Indiana State. Is followed by UCLA against New Mexico. Coverage begins with the pregame show, 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific, on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. What about Nebraska? They had 728 yards of offense in that annihilation of Akron. Is this a team that we should be talking about, Jerry, as a dark horse to compete for the playoff and to compete at the very top of the conference?
I'm not ready to buy into that. I think they have some issues, and here's what I think their issues are. They ran the ball for 110 yards against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's the best team they've played. They threw it for 243 yards. Against Akron, they threw it for 494 yards and rushed for 234 yards. To be a pass-first team in this type of conference is a real challenge. Why? You're going to go against some of the best defensive lines in the country, some of the best edge rushes in the country. You're going to have to be able to protect your quarterback with 5 offensive linemen. You can keep it back in, which you may have to do. The second thing, if you're going to live with a pass-first offense, you better be able to break coverage. You're going to be playing against some of the best secondaries in the Big Ten and some of the best secondaries in the country. So if they're going to continue with this ratio, now if you look at how many times they called runs and how many times they called passes, there's nothing to be alarmed about. They're a little bit in favor of the pass, but to have most of your offense to run for 490 to pass for 494 yards against Akron, to me, is an issue. I would rather rush for 494 yards, throw for 234 yards, only because when you play the best teams, if you don't have a running attack, that's going to be an issue. And we'll have to see how it unfolds. So that's my only question when you ask the question, are they ready to play the best teams in the conference? We'll have to wait and see. Historically, this doesn't work, but we can change history.
We certainly can, and we'll learn a lot, I think, in a couple weeks here when they take on Michigan, a game we're already talking about. But it seems to me the point you're trying to make is it should look a little different against Houston Christian, if for no other reason than it gives you a chance to build some positive thoughts about your run game. Not that the run game was terrible, but a thought that you can turn around, hand it to Emmett Johnson or whoever it is, and win a game.
Yeah, I think you have to be in that position. I mean, the red zone alone gives you issue. You know, it's almost like, and I said this preseason, you know, they ran towards something that Wisconsin was running away from. You know, I think they're in similar situations. But again, we'll have to see it unfold. I could be way off base, but that's just my play. 494 yards in a pass game is a red flag to me. Not good news.
Well, one thing that I think Nebraska fans are fired up about, just 2 turnovers through 2 games. We know how much they have struggled with turnover margin here in recent years. Great stuff, Coach. Great to see you. We'll do it again next week. Jake Butt and Joel Klatt here tomorrow. See you then for Big Ten Today.